Hello, it's me again, Sir Lepran, here to give you another lecture on English proficiency for empowered professionals. But before we begin, I would like to make a couple of clarifications first. I received questions from some students earlier asking why it's my face they see at the bottom left corner of their screen and my voice they hear doing these lectures when in fact I am not their professor. The name listed on their eBrahman account for Professor for EPR is a different name. Well, the answer to that is quite simple. I was tasked to make these video lectures for EPR so that other professors might use them as well. This is what humanity calls sharing. So expect to see me in a lot of these video lectures. But if you have any question, any concern regarding this course, you should consult your professor. Their information is provided in the study guide under Module 0. Now back to regular programming. Today, I am going to talk about a skill that was taught to us as early as kindergarten. In some households, parents teach this to their kids even before they start formal schooling. What I'm talking about is reading comprehension. Now, some of you might think that reading is a boring, if not a daunting task. But regardless of what you think about reading, this is probably one of the most important and one of the most useful skill that you would learn. We read every day, from simple text messages to road signs or full papers. A vast majority of the world's knowledge is made available to us through reading. Surely there are other means by which you can get information such as this video lecture, but I can only give you limited information. If you want to know the full information, then you're going to have to read. I think it is safe to say that we cannot do away with reading. So let's start by defining what reading is. According to Webster's dictionary, comprehension is the capacity for understanding fully the act or action of grasping with the intellect. Webster also tells us that reading is to receive or take in the sense of, as in letters or symbols, by scanning. To understand the meaning of written or printed matter, to learn from what one has seen or found in writing or printing. Now, out of these two definitions of reading, one word stands out. That word is understanding. Now, there is more to reading than simply recognizing the symbols printed on the page. One cannot say that he has read unless he has understood fully what he has recognized in those symbols. Reading only achieves full circle once understanding or comprehension is achieved. Now, before we proceed, let's know first where we stand, where the Philippines stands in the global scale when it comes to reading performance. In 2018, PISA, or the Program for International Student Assessment, conducted a reading test. They also conducted tests on mathematics and science. It was participated by 79 countries, including the Philippines. Now, sadly, in the PISA, we would see that the Philippines ranked dead last when it comes to reading comprehension. Now, this says a lot about our reading performance. Right? Out of 79 countries, the number one is China, and the country at the bottom, is us. But wait, there's more. That's not the only thing. The Philippines also ranked second to the lowest in mathematics and science. Now, this is not to say that our poor performance in mathematics and science is caused by our poor performance in reading, but there is definitely correlation. There's a correlation between our low performance in reading and our low performance in mathematics and science. Now, you may say, I don't need to read. I am a future engineer, and engineers or accountants do a lot of computations. They don't do a lot of readings. But as the test results show us, right, there is a correlation between the performance in reading and the performance in mathematics and science. So to be good at mathematics and science, you first need to be good at reading. After all, You're going to be reading your word problems first before you can solve them. Now, today I'm going to teach you how to improve, how to better your reading skills so that other areas such as mathematics and science would come easy for you. Now, there's a lot of different skills in reading comprehension. I have listed some of them here. We have here finding main ideas, inferences and drawing conclusions, recognizing a text patterns of organization, summarizing and paraphrasing, reading for information and details, reading and interpreting non-prose forms including graphs, tables, and charts and diagrams. Yep, that is considered reading as well. Understanding opinions and detecting biases, identifying tone, mood, and style, and rhetorical patterns such as comparison contrast, cause effect, description, and narration. Now, all of these skills in reading are important, but later we would only be focusing on 5 of these skills. Now, there are levels of comprehension, there are levels to it. A person progresses in each level as he grows older, given the right education. So the first level is what we call the literal level. That's level 1. In the literal level of comprehension, you are asked questions such as who, what, when, and where. These are simple questions, basic questions. The only thing that you need to do to answer those questions is to skim through or scan a text. Because what we're looking for when you're asked a literal level comprehension question is what is actually stated, which means the answer to the question is automatically provided in the text that you're reading. All you need to do is look. After level 1 is level 2, of course, and we call level 2 interpretive level. Now, in the interpretive level, you're asked what is implied or meant rather than what is actually stated. So to make it simple, under level 2, you're asked to read between the lines. Under this level would fall making inferences and drawing conclusions. The answer to the question is not directly stated in the text, but you can still find the answer in there. You just have to dig deeper. You just have to look at the context. You just have to look at the evidence. You're asked to predict outcomes. You're asked to draw conclusions. So again, in short, it's reading between the lines. Now, the last level, the highest level, level 3, is called applied comprehension. Now, in applied comprehension, it means taking what was said, level 1, and then what was meant, level 2, and then extend the concepts or ideas beyond the situation. This is the highest level because in this level, you're asked to apply what you have read. This is basically what you do when you're solving mathematical problems. When you read a word mathematical problem, you're reading level 1 and level 2. But more than understanding the problem, you need to find a solution. When you're finding a solution to a problem, you are then applying the knowledge that you've learned from reading the text. By now, we are expecting that as college students, you're already at level 3. And you're going to do a lot of level 3 reading in college. Trust me, you will. Your life as college students would be easier if you master reading, all the 3 levels, that is. Now, moving on to the specifics. Again, like I said, all the other reading skills mentioned earlier are important, but for the sake of brevity, we are only going to focus on 4 skills, actually 5. Right? I forgot to add one here. So we're going to talk about skimming and scanning. These are basic. Context clues, making inferences, and lastly, drawing conclusions. Again, just like the previous lesson, details on this lecture are provided on your modules. If you want to know more, you should read the whole module. Examples are given there, further explanations are given there. You're going to have to really read that. So let's start with skimming. So what is skimming? Skimming is defined as reading quickly to get the general idea of a passage. When we say we get the general idea, we get the main idea. We are asked questions such as, what was the passage about? You're asked the theme of a story. In short, in 2 sentences or 3 sentences after skimming, you should be able to tell someone what you have read. Now, what do you actually do when you skim? The first thing that you do is you don't read everything when you skim. You just make a run through of the entire text. To help you better skim, what you need to do is read the first and last sentences. Usually the general idea or the main idea of a text is located, if not at the beginning of the text, is at the bottom of the text. Read the introduction and the summary. Read a few examples until you understand the concepts they are meant to illustrate. So in skimming, you're not gonna take a long time reading because what you're after is simply the general idea of the text. What you're after is the main idea. And you can do this by simply browsing through the entire text. Again, there are places in the text where you can find these main ideas. Most of the time, it's at the beginning or the introduction or at the ending or the conclusion. Now, here are some more tips on how you can better skim. 1. Read the title. The title almost always gives you clues as to what the whole text is about. Read the subtitle or introduction if there is a subtitle. The introduction is really important. Read the first sentences of each paragraph. The first sentence of each paragraph usually contains the thesis statement or the main idea. Notice any picture, charts, or graphics. If these things are provided, they can give you a clear idea of what the whole text is. Read the summary or last paragraph if there is one. Most of the time, there is one. The conclusion or the summary or the last paragraph ties the loose ends of a text. And since it summarizes the whole thing, most likely you would find the general idea of the text there. So those are simple tips on how to skim. The next reading skill is called scanning. Now, skimming and scanning are the same in a sense that you don't take time reading. You don't read the whole thing. You just make a run through of the entire text. But it is different in a sense that they are different in what is being looked for. In skimming, you're looking for main idea. In scanning, on the other hand, you're not looking for main ideas. You're looking for specific information, such as keywords. Now, let's take a look at scanning this way. If you remember during your elementary days, when your science teacher gives you a homework, most of the time it's questions like, what is photosynthesis? What is chlorophyll? Then when you get home, you're going to get your science book. You're going to go to the chapter where photosynthesis is. Then you don't read the whole chapter. You just look for the word photosynthesis. Once you've found it, it's usually in boldface in elementary books. You just copy the definition. Then you look for chlorophyll. Where's chlorophyll? Once you found chlorophyll, you copy the definition, close the book, close your notebook, and then you're done with your homework. That is what scanning is. You don't read the whole thing. You just look for specific information provided in the text, right? You only look for information that is asked for. Once you've found these information, then you're done. Now, there are 3 different steps to scanning to make scanning easier for you. First step is search for keywords. Keywords are always provided in the text. Move quickly over the page, just like what you would do when you skim. And there's less reading and more searching when it comes to scanning. So it's like using your dictionary. When you're looking for the definition of a word in the dictionary, you don't really read the whole thing. You don't read it word per word, right? You just look, you just scan for the word, and once you found it, copy the definition, then that's it. You're done. Scanning is that simple. The next reading skill is called finding the meaning of words through context clues. Now, a dictionary is really helpful for you in identifying the meaning of words. But in some occasions, you forget to bring your dictionary or you're not allowed to use your dictionary. Nowadays, it's quite easy because we've got dictionary applications on our smartphones. But in some instances, you're not allowed to even use your smartphone. But what if you come across a word in a sentence and you don't know what that word means? Now, here's the problem. When you're reading something, let's say, for example, as small as a sentence, and there's a word there that you don't understand, you should not proceed to the next sentence. If you don't understand a word in a sentence, there's a great chance that you don't understand the entire sentence. Right? This is how you properly read. Don't skip. If there's a word that you don't understand, you have to know what the meaning of that word is to fully understand the sentence and then the paragraph and then the entire text. Now, the problem is, what if I don't have a dictionary with me? This is where our context clues would come in. Now, what are context clues, or how do you use context? To use context is to use the words surrounding the unfamiliar word to help determine the unknown word's meaning. Clues are always provided in the sentence. You just have to look at the other words that come with the unfamiliar word in that sentence, and they most likely would provide you with the clue as to the meaning of the unfamiliar word. Now, why are these important? One, they help us define unfamiliar, difficult words in text. Two, they help us to become better, perceptive readers. They become handy during tests when a dictionary or the internet is not available to us. Again, in most tests, right, in most standardized tests, the only thing that you're allowed to have on your table is your pen, your paper, and your test questions. Phones are not allowed, so you can't consult your dictionary applications. Dictionaries are not allowed. And if this is the case, then you're on your own. But even though you're on your own, again, there are still some techniques that you can use to identify the meaning of the word, and that is through the use of context clues. Now, where can context clues be found? Simple. Context clues are usually found in the same sentence as the difficult or the unfamiliar word. If it's not in the same sentence, it's in the same paragraph or passage as the unknown word. Context clues can be in the sentences following the word for example. Right? If you see the phrase for example, that is usually a context clue. It would give you a better idea as to the meaning of the unfamiliar word. Now, they are called context clues because they are found in the context of the sentence or the passage. Now, another skill in reading which is very, very useful is making inference. Now, when you make an inference, you make a decision reached on the basis of evidence in the reading and your own background knowledge. Now, this is quite tricky because the answer to the question is not directly stated in the text. This is level 2 reading, interpretive reading. You're asked to read between the lines. Now, what is an inference? An inference is an educated guess. Take note of this. There's a difference between a wild guess and an educated guess. A wild guess is simply a guess. It doesn't have any basis. An educated guess though has basis. Your basis would always be the evidence provided to you by the text. So always consult those evidence. Those evidence would help you make better inferences. Now, an inference is reading between the lines. I've already told you that earlier. And an inference is not directly stated in the text you're reading. Again, I've already told you that. So in short, to make an inference is to make an educated guess. Now, you probably have made educated guesses before, then you've already made inferences. If you haven't, then every time you make guesses, you have to make sure that it's educated, informed guesses. Based on evidence, based on data. That is how you make inferences. Now, how can inferring help me as a student or as a professional? Well, when you infer, you define unknown words using context clues. So again, we go back to the previous skill. You learn about a character, even if the character or the characteristics of that persona is not directly stated. You can picture the setting even though it's not directly described. You can determine author's characters, feelings, and biases. You can make conclusions, predict outcomes, and you can use your prior knowledge to better understand reading. It is important in making inferences that you tap on your prior knowledge. Now, where do you get these prior knowledge? From reading, of course. You've read some text before which is related to what you're reading right now, and you can use these knowledge from previous backgrounds, from previous readings, to be able to make proper inferences. Now, the last skill that we're going to talk about is drawing conclusions. Now, drawing conclusions and making inferences are quite related. It's related because, again, in drawing conclusions, you're making a guess, but not just any other guess, it's an educated guess. Now, in drawing conclusions, you're making a judgment based on the information provided and what you know in your head. Again, pretty much like making inferences. Information provided, that would be your evidence. What you know in your head, that would be your background information. You put them together and then you make perfect, if not perfect, is near perfect conclusions. Now, when selecting, the correct answer is either highly likely or certain. So if it's not 90% correct, it's higher than that, right? That is what it means when you draw conclusions. Again, why is the answer highly likely or certain? Because you had basis. Your basis would be the evidence presented in the text. Now, when you're asked to draw a conclusion, you might have to, number one, find an example, or note the contrast, or you're asked to generalize, or sometimes you have to find the cause and effect relationship. Just like what I did earlier when I told you that there is a relationship between low performance in reading and low performance in mathematics and science. Again, we did not rank last in mathematics and science in the PISA test, but we ranked second lowest. That's not that far. In drawing conclusions, you might also be asked to detect a mood, or recognize an analogy, or identify time and place relationship, make comparisons, or anticipate outcomes. These are the steps that you need to take when drawing conclusions. Again, like what I've said earlier, this video lecture can only give you limited information. If you want to know more about reading, and if you want more examples on how to read properly, understand properly, Lesson 2, Module 1 provides that for you. It's already uploaded on your LMS classes. You have access to that, so read, right? Reading is a habit that everyone needs to develop. If you don't develop the habit of reading, then the world's collection of knowledge would not be available for you. Once again, this is Sir Lepran. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.